Greetings, students. Welcome to the seventh and the final module of this course, Technology and Society. And the title of this module is Can Machines Think? Technology, Artificial Intelligence, and the Future of Power in Society. So, like all the past six modules, I'm going to break this module into two parts. In the first part, I'm going to give you a brief history of technology, artificial intelligence, some of which I've already talked about in my previous lectures, and walk you through some of the projects that have been done across the world, including India, that have employed, technology and artificial intelligence in questions of humanities and social sciences. And in the second part of the lecture on this module, I'm going to cover the more power geometries, questions of ethics, inequalities that relates to technology and AI. So, starting with a very brief history of artificial intelligence, in 1950, Alan Turing, who is the British mathematician and computer scientist and a major contributor to the field of artificial intelligence, wrote an article titled Computing Machinery and Intelligence. And in that article, Turing opens the article with the following, and I quote, I propose to consider the question, can machines think? This should begin with the definitions of the meaning of the terms machine and think, close quote. And of course, throughout the rest of the article, Turing sort of brings us, challenges us to operationalize how we understand machines, how we understand thinking procedures. And he draws us to the idea of digital computers. And this idea of digital computers is not a very new one. In fact, he shows us it takes us back to the idea of digital computer as proposed by Charles Babbage, who of course calls it the analytical engine. So Charles Babbage was the Lucasian professor of mathematics at Cambridge from 1828 to 1839. And Babbage sort of planned this machine, which he termed as the analytical engine. Now, according to scholars, according to technicians, according to philosophers, this an analytical engine was not completed, but nevertheless, it is taken as the first computer in the world. So, and then in the same article, Turing sort of draws us to the memoirs, of Lady Lovelace, which she wrote in 1842. Lady Lovelace is regarded as the first computer programmer in the world. And Turing sort of states that most of this detailed information about Babbage's analytical engine comes from Lady Lovelace's memoir. And in that memoir, Lady Lovelace states that the analytical engine has no pretensions to originate anything. It can do whatever we know how to order it to perform. And of course, Lady Lovelace was talking about computer programming in this regard. So, with this in context, when we come to questions of technology, when we come to questions of artificial intelligence and the society, the larger society, standing in the 21st century, it is important for us to reflect back on the history that we started with in this course. Where do we get the idea of the term technology? So we talked about tech, the idea of tech that comes from the Greek understanding, that originally comes from the Indo-European sort of an understanding, and forms into the Greek understanding of techne. and sort of broad into specialized expertise of know-how of skill sets that enable us to do something that would otherwise not exist. So, and from that understanding of tech to technique to the day and age of artificial intelligence that we stand in today, has been a quite a significant journey for societies across the world. And in that journey, as we also spoke before in some of my previous lectures, the idea of techne, the idea of phronesis, and the idea of episteme needs to be dealt with front and center. So, techne being the know-how or how we do things, the phronesis is the wisdom, behind doing that sort of technical know-how, and episteme being the larger idea of knowledge production. So, what started as a knowledge hierarchy, techne being the foundation, then coming phronesis, and then episteme, kept going that way. Even today, when we look at questions of technology and artificial intelligence, it is it is quite difficult, in fact, impossible, to look at questions of AI, questions of technology, without looking at social repercussions, without looking at questions of power geometries, power dynamics as they would operate in the society. So, if you look at this journey of artificial intelligence from tech to techne to AI as we know of it today, um, this journey has been sort of looked at in phases, and what you're looking at is a linear diagram on the screen, but it is really not that linear in terms of progression. This is for the more clarity and sake of understanding that I've kept it linear. So what started looking at primarily in the humanities and social sciences, looking at text as data, that you have pages and pages and volumes of text data, and what do you do with that data? How do you analyze that data? So and how do you find patterns in that data? So using text as data sort of was one of the earliest phases of employing technology, of employing question of the technique, the know-how of understanding, finding patterns from the data. And we have seen some of the very early works, for example, in India, if you look up the Bichitra project, the Tagore Variorum, for example, that has been one of the pioneering projects in the Indian context, that looks at finding patterns in text as data. So the Bichitra project sort of is a Tagore Variorum, which is a collection of Tagore's significant works. And one of the major contributions of the Bichitra project has been to bring in this interconnectedness between, the works of Tagore within a single compilation. So they talk about how they created the search and the collation functions to attain this. You can also look up, the MIT Digital Humanities project on computational study of gender in novels. That is another computational, study of looking at text data and finding patterns in that data. So from there, we also see that more and more projects have been dealing with questions of images, questions of digitization. And while we have looked at some of the broader questions of identities, inequalities, ethical challenges that deal with, questions of images in digital spaces or digitization in digital spaces, today, I'm going to show you some more examples of employing technology, employing, artificial intelligence, for example, to cases of heritage in digital spaces. And from there, images and digitization, we also see a lot of projects around the world that has employed AI and technology, for example, to understanding sound, audio, for example, sound reproduction, producing musical databases, looking at objects, looking at machine classification, dating of inscriptions, numbers, multimedia statistical programming, to where we are currently now in the day and age of artificial intelligence, augmented virtual reality, mixed reality, so on and so forth. So, going to the question of augmented reality and virtual reality, there has been one of the pioneering projects in employing technology in the humanities, in the social sciences, and this is a project that is titled the Virtual Harlem. And this was pioneered by Professor Brian Carter from University of Arizona, where Professor Carter, creates this AR, VR sort of an immersive experience of the 1920s Harlem Renaissance movement in New York City. So, in this creation of this immersive experience, Professor Carter, takes us back in history, makes us look at questions of humanities, questions of historical, social sciences, and makes us part of that day and age of the 1920s, Harlem Renaissance, and which is a visual representation of Harlem, New York, in the 1920s. So you can follow this link and take a look at how this immersive experience was created, and you can actually understand what goes on behind the scene, and that it is not just technology, not just employing artificial intelligence to create this immersive experiences, but there are important questions of society, social ramifications, other broader questions of social sciences that need to be addressed in order to produce that sort of a immersive experience. So the Harlem Renaissance, the virtual Harlem project is one of the classic examples, that look at the intersection of technology, AI, and the humanities and social sciences. The next, type of projects that have dealt with technology, AI, and along questions of humanities and social sciences, and in the Indian context, is the Indian Digital Heritage Project. Now, this was a mega project that was heavily funded by the government of the DST, the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, and this was the Indian Digital Heritage Project was a unique initiative that supported this collaborative, understanding working between researchers in areas of technology and humanities and social sciences for the digital documentation and interpretation of India's tangible and intangible heritage. So, the goal of the Indian heritage in digital spaces was to extend the power of digital technologies to beyond the monuments of beyond the architectural monuments to to more producing of forms of cultural historical knowledge systems, and this was to go beyond simply just storing or restoring or resharing of heritage data, but also to use immersive experiences to answer more of these experiences around consumption of heritage and negotiation of identities, that one does around heritage. So it was a collaborative project between computer scientists, between art historians, between architects, and any others technical skill set personnel that were part of this project. So one of the major projects that emerged from the this Indian heritage in digital spaces was the Digital Humpy project. And the Digital Humpy project was based on the World Heritage Site of Hampi in Karnataka, and Hampi, which was the capital of the Vijayanagar Empire from the 14th to the mid 16th century. And this project saw the revival, not just the revival, but also going beyond the revival and restoration of the legacy of architectural ruins, temples, art, and to the extent of living conditions. So what this project did was employing technology, employing AI, to not just visually reconstructing models of the architecture, but also recreating, for example, lifestyle conditions in that day and age. So, for example, recreating a bazaar scene animation was one of the outputs of this project. How would a bazaar, a marketplace, look like in that historical setting? And that sort of involved environmental modeling, and a lot of motion blurring, to create that experience. The another sort of aspect that this project looked at, looking at the living conditions, was the reconstruction of clothing, particularly male clothing, and it's coming up from not just the fashion, what they used to wear, but also to arriving at a color palette. What sort of colors were used in clothing. So involved a lot of humanities and social science sort of inquiry to understanding what the lifestyle conditions were, and how people engaged in questions of dressing, when and where, and so on and so forth. So this project, the Digital Humpy project, which this is the book that is one of the outputs of this project, by Anupama Malik, Shantanu Chaudhary, and others. That also looked at the idea of habitus and social spaces, as we have covered in one of the previous lectures. That how do you sort of understand a digital space as a social space? So in as part of this project, you will see a lot of digital annotations that have been done of artifacts by experts, image in painting restoration. You will see a lot of analysis of wall murals, and of course, creation of lifestyle conditions, starting from the bazaar scene to active other bazaar activities, and so on and so forth. So not just social spaces. This project also sort of opens up doors to talk about how the relations of production produces gendered spaces, in the digital question, in this case. So with that, I also want to emphasize that there has been globally a a significant number of projects that have sort of looked at employing AI, looked at employing technology to heritage, questions of heritage, and you can look up some of these projects, like the Oxford Friars project, that and other projects that have engaged with 3D printing, 3D modeling of digital heritage in digital spaces. Going on with the idea of immersive experiences, and going beyond the question of digital heritage, I'm sure you also must have heard about, if not experienced, the immersive experience of Van Gogh's painting that was doing its global tour. And the tagline of this immersive experience was that, have you ever dreamt of stepping into a painting? Now you can. And this immersive experience of creating an experience to walk into a painting that usually what we see is a painting on the wall, or the painting kept, and you look at a painting and you consume that painting. But what happens when you are part of that painting? What happens when you're walking into a painting? Then what happens to your experience? And these are questions that immersive experiences raise for us. That how does the experience vary for for the spectator, for the audience, for the consumer, um, when you're just looking at a painting versus when you're walking into a painting and becoming part of that painting, that immersive experience is allowing you to be. So there has been many such projects done around the world that look at questions of digital embodiment. For example, in this project, which is a 2018 IEEE paper, um, the scholars dealt with the question of, does a digital assistant need a body? The influence of visual embodiment and social behavior on the perception of intelligent virtual agents in AR. And in that, the questions that they raise is not just technological, but also, when we have digital assistant, and we are giving a prompt to a digital assistant, does it matter that the digital assistant has a body, is embodied? And these are larger questions of social science reflections, of humanities reflections, that you can reflect on. That when we take our life to the digital spaces, how identically or how differently does it translate for us, for our experiences in the digital space?